Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and the date today is Sunday, July 7th, 2024. I've been doing a countdown of my favorite video games of all time through each day of the year, and coming in at number 178 is Impostor Factory. Impostor Factory is the newest title from Gao and is the third major game set in the world of his breakout To the Moon. I gushed about how brilliant Gao is when I ranked A Bird Story as my 201st favorite game, and everything I said there remains true in Impostor Factory. The beautiful storytelling with its simple charm and snappy dialogue remains fully intact. The music is heartfelt and vastly improves every single scene. In fact, some of the musical cues and motifs that are repeated from earlier games in the franchise aren't just blatant reuse, but are instead brilliant foreshadowing to the plot. I think he could be an Academy Award-winning film composer if he chose to pursue that, but I'm okay with playing games. In Impostor Factory, you play as Quincy, a remarkably featureless protagonist, at least at the start. He shows up at this giant mansion for reasons that even he doesn't remember. Upon looking around, he meets a woman named Linry, and there's a lot of humor in the early game, notably with Ricebot. All hail Ricebot, long may he reign. But then Quincy discovers the owners of the mansion murdered. He rushes downstairs to wash the blood off his hands from finding the bodies, and then emerges from the restroom to discover the owners are alive? And Linry doesn't remember him. In fact, it's almost as if he traveled back in time. You go through that sequence a few more times, each time finding the owners murdered and learning more about Linry each time, but it becomes apparent that there are two Linrys running around. To have a code word when you try to travel back in time, again with Linry, she tells you her secret is just the word lavender. The murders continue escalating until eventually things get really wild. More than any other game in this franchise, Impostor Factory is willing to dip a little more into the horror aspects and tell a much more ambitious narrative. Sometimes it works great, like this early part of the game. Other times, it's a little hard to follow. It turns out that none of this is real, and neither are you. You're actually a figment of a simulation. But for some reason, when the host of the simulation resets it, you retain your memories. The host is, of course, the second Linry that's been running around. After explaining all of this to you, she forces you through a door in the mansion that had been locked the whole time, where you walk through a tunnel of her memories. This is the core of the game, and along this tunnel, you follow most of Linry's life. She's a small girl on a field trip to see wild lavender, which is where her code word comes from, of course, and is having a great time. But quickly, you learn she has some kind of medical issue and she passes out. The rest of this segment of the game is following her life as she grows up. She gets a medical diagnosis leading to an interest in biology, which leads to an interest in the physical workings of neurology, especially pertaining to memory. At the top of her class, working on her doctorate, she meets and falls in love with Quincy. That's right, the character you're playing, or at least fake simulation of him, is the creator of this world's love interest. I don't want to fully spoil this game because it is a truly great story worth experiencing, but also because the further you get into the story, the more it requires spoiling To the Moon and Finding Paradise, and I'm just not ready to do that yet. But to give some quick hits, Linry is a certified genius and is recruited by this company to work on a secret project kept at the same mansion you started the game at. In To the Moon and its sequel, you play as doctors that use a machine to literally enter the memories of dying patients and manipulate them so that they die thinking they've achieved their greatest dreams. This was Linry's invention and the reason she was hired by the company. There's more direct attachment to, and her struggling balance between work and her relationship with Quincy is a major element to the story. But again, I don't want to spoil too much. Just know the ending has a lot of implications. The story is phenomenal and deeply emotional. The only reason that this isn't a top 100 game is that at some point it feels like it does kind of jump the shark a bit, even if it does create a lot of interesting and I think necessary questions to push the franchise forward, so I'm extremely excited to see what's in store for the future of Kangao and Freebird games. You can join me tomorrow as I talk about my 177th favorite game, where I just felt like running.